I only needed a pinch of salt. Just a pinch. But when the door opened, it wasn't him standing there. It was her. She had that kind of calm presence that makes the world seem slower for a moment. Mid-40s, maybe, with hair loosely pinned back and a cardigan that looked softer than it had any right to be. She folded a napkin on the kitchen table while I stood there, feeling like an intruder, my hands shoved in my pockets. The folding wasn't precise, not exactly symmetrical. Her fingers hovered over the fabric for a second longer than necessary, as if deciding whether it mattered. That small hesitation caught me more than I expected. "Oh, salt." Her voice was low, measured. Not sharp, not dismissive. Just quiet, like she wasn't sure if I should be there at all. I nodded, feeling my throat tighten. "Yeah, I just needed a pinch. Sorry to bother." She raised an eyebrow slightly, a tiny tilt that was almost teasing, but not quite. "Come in, then. Don't just stand there." The kitchen smelled faintly of something baked. Vanilla? Cinnamon? I wasn't sure, but it grounded me. She moved slowly toward a shelf, eyes flicking to her hands as she searched. She pulled a small container down, wiped it gently with a corner of a dish towel, then handed it to me. Our fingers brushed. Barely, but I remembered it. I said thanks, and for a second, thought I should just leave. But she lingered, leaning against the counter with one arm crossed, the other idly twisting a ring around her finger. "You've been coming by the neighborhood more lately," she said. No judgment, just observation. Her eyes scanned me in a way that didn't demand anything, yet somehow felt like an invitation. I swallowed. "Yeah, I needed to grab a few things. Thought I'd check if anyone had." I trailed off, suddenly aware of how my words sounded. Stupid. Awkward. She smiled softly, and it wasn't the kind of smile that fixes everything. It was the kind that notices things, the pause in my voice, the way my hands fidgeted with the salt shaker, the quiet tension in my shoulders. A smile that made me forget I was supposed to be in control of my own words. There was a pause, and I realized I hadn't even asked for the actual salt. I held it out, like a small peace offering. She glanced at it, then back at me, flicking her eyes briefly toward her hands as if weighing whether this moment should last longer. "You can keep it," she said finally. "Or bring it back whenever. If you remember." I nodded, a little breathless. I wanted to say something clever, meaningful, anything, but nothing came. Silence filled the room, punctuated only by the faint ticking of the clock above the fridge. I left with the salt, but not before our eyes met in that brief, suspended way, and I could feel something shift inside me. Not dramatic, not suddenly, just a quiet recognition, like finding a song I didn't know I'd been missing. Halfway down the stairs, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, heart stuttering, fingers hovering over the screen. A message from her? Maybe. But the screen read something else entirely, a wrong number. I stared at it, wishing it was hers. And for a moment, walking back toward my apartment, the ordinary morning felt like the edge of something I couldn't name yet. Something I might never forget. The next time I saw her, it wasn't by accident. I had been lingering outside, pretending to admire the chipped paint on the railing, when she appeared in the doorway, a mug of tea in one hand. "You always seem to be in the right place at the wrong time," she said, a small smirk tugging at her lips. I shrugged. Or maybe the wrong place at the right time. She laughed softly, a sound that didn't fill the room but somehow made it warmer. She motioned me inside. Her kitchen smelled faintly of something sweet again, maybe bread this time, maybe cinnamon lingering from yesterday. I noticed the way she stacked mugs with a careful precision, then paused, one hand hovering over the counter. Before settling it down, little pauses, little hesitations. Everything about her seemed weighted with quiet thought. "I used to bake a lot," she said, breaking a silence that had settled comfortably between us. "Before everything." Her eyes flicked toward the window, then back at me. "Kids, work, life." I nodded, unsure if I should probe or just let her speak. There was something in the way she let the words hang that made me want to fill the gaps, even if I had no right. We sat across from each other at the small kitchen table. She poured the tea without speaking, and I watched the steam curl lazily upward. I imagined us in other scenarios, absurdly ordinary and terribly intimate. Folding laundry together, grocery aisles at night, sitting on a balcony with too many blankets. The thoughts surprised me. They made me feel both guilty and alive. She noticed my hand lingering near the edge of the table. Without comment, she slid hers over, brushing my fingers with hers, light enough to be casual, but deliberate enough to notice. My chest tightened. I looked away, imagining the complications. Her life, her son, the whispers I'd hear if anyone knew. But the warmth stayed, quiet and persistent. "Have you ever missed something you didn't know you wanted?" she asked, eyes scanning mine as if she could read the hesitation. "Sometimes," I said too softly. "Maybe too honestly." She nodded, picking up her mug and spinning it gently. "I suppose that's life. Things we didn't plan. Things we didn't expect." And yet, her gaze lingered on the steam rising from the cup. "Sometimes it's exactly what we need." A long pause. The kind that settles into the bones. I wanted to say more, but words felt dangerous, too loud. Instead, I reached for the sugar bowl and offered it. She accepted it with a quiet smile, fingers brushing mine again. Not enough to change anything. Enough to mark the moment. I left later, walking back with the faint taste of tea on my tongue and her gaze replaying in my head. I didn't know why that small touch stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't ready to be seen. I thought it would be simple: borrow something, nod politely, leave. But simple wasn't a word that existed around her. We were in the kitchen again. I was helping her clear the counter after she made lunch, stacking plates carefully while she rinsed them. She hummed softly, almost absent-mindedly, and I found myself watching the curve of her shoulder, the way her fingers lingered on the edge of the sink. I told myself it was just an observation. Normal. Innocent. "I've been meaning to ask," she started, then stopped. Her eyes flicked to mine, uncertain, as if weighing whether to finish the sentence. I held my breath. "Never mind," she said finally, turning to the faucet, shaking her head. I didn't say anything. I wanted to. The words hovered on the tip of my tongue, but they felt too heavy, too dangerous. I could feel my pulse in my ears. Then the door opened. Her son, my friend, called out from the hallway. "Hey, Mom, I'm home early." Her hand froze on the dish, and I almost stepped back too quickly. The moment shattered into ordinary fragments. The clatter of plates, his boots on the tiles, the hum of the fridge. I wanted to vanish, wanted to tell myself it hadn't happened. She smiled at him, polite, effortless. But I caught the way her eyes flicked back to mine before she turned fully away. There was something unsaid there. Tension compressed into a single glance. We sat down to tea afterward, silence stretching between us. I kept my fingers curled around the cup, noticing the warmth seep into my hands. She sat opposite, stirring hers slowly, and I realized I was imagining her hand touching mine again, just once. My chest tightened. "I shouldn't," she murmured, more to herself than to me. Then paused, watching the steam rise from her tea. "I mean we shouldn't." I nodded, words failing me entirely. There was no argument, no denial. Just the quiet pull of something that shouldn't exist, and yet refused to let go. Minutes passed. We sipped our tea in fragmented quiet. Each glance, each pause, filled with invisible weight. My throat tightened every time our eyes met. I imagined leaning closer, just an inch, until something changed. Until we crossed that line. The clock ticked too loudly. Her son's laughter echoed faintly from the living room. My hands twitched, hovering near hers on the table. Almost. I wanted to reach. She wanted to. I could see it. The way her lips parted slightly, the tilt of her head, the brief catch in her breath. But neither of us moved. The moment collapsed under its own gravity, leaving us both aware, aching, and unsaid. I left with the same pinch of salt in my pocket that I had come for the first time. Only now, it felt heavier. And I couldn't stop thinking about what almost happened, what nearly happened, and how the world suddenly felt smaller, quieter, and impossibly fragile. It was late afternoon when I found her sitting on the park bench near the corner store. The sky had that washed-out gray, the kind that makes everything seem both soft and sharp at once. I slowed my steps, pretending to tie my shoelace, though I wasn't fooling anyone. She looked up as I approached, and her smile hit me like it always did, quiet, knowing, almost too late. I sat down beside her, careful not to brush against her sleeve, careful not to give away how much I wanted to. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, voice low, maybe amused, maybe wary. "I thought I should," I muttered. "Before it gets dark." My words sounded small even to me. We watched people pass, dog walkers, couples with ice cream, a man balancing grocery bags. Ordinary things, But in the pause between each sound, between each glance, the space around us felt electric. She shifted slightly, flicking her fingers over the seam of her jacket. "You've been quiet today," she said. But it wasn't just observation, it was an invitation. I wanted to tell her everything. The way my thoughts kept circling her, the ridiculous scenarios I imagined, the guilt I felt for wanting her when I shouldn't. But the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I said, "You were busy?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Busy, yes. But distracted too, I suppose." Her voice trailed off. We fell into silence. A quiet, tense silence. My thumb brushed against my knee repeatedly, a tiny, nervous rhythm. I caught her looking at me once, flicking her gaze away quickly, like she'd been caught. "I shouldn't. I mean," she started, then stopped. She took a breath, and I could see the hesitation in the slight clench of her jaw. "It's complicated." I nodded, even though I wanted to shake my head, to insist it wasn't. But complications had a weight that didn't bend to desire. "Sometimes I wonder," she whispered, almost to herself, "what it would be like if—" She stopped, head tilted down, fingers twisting a loose thread on her scarf. The air thickened. My chest tightened. I imagined leaning forward, closing the space between us, asking her to finish. But I didn't. Instead, I let my hand hover near hers, just above the bench. Close enough to feel heat, but not enough to cross. "I don't know," I said softly, voice almost drowned by the rustle of leaves. "Maybe it's better if we don't." Her eyes lifted slowly, and for a fraction of a second, I thought I could see every unspoken truth reflected there. Longing, fear, guilt, curiosity. She didn't speak. The question hung between us, unasked, but heavier than any words could be. I stood, pretending I had somewhere else to be, even though I didn't. She remained seated, scarf twisted loosely around her neck, hands resting on the edge of the bench. And just like that, the world felt suspended, fragile, urgent, full of things we almost said, almost did. Would we say it next time? Or would the moment pass, leaving only the ache of what nearly happened? The next few days, I didn't see her. Not at the park, not by the garden gate, not even through the kitchen window where she usually left the curtains half open. At first, I told myself it was nothing. People get busy. But silence has its own way of multiplying. By the third day, it had turned into something heavier. I tried to focus on work, on small things, dishes, laundry, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. But everything kept looping back to her. The way she folded her napkin, the half-finished sentence on the bench, the question she didn't ask. By the fourth day, I gave in and walked past her house. The window was closed. Lights dim. For a second, I thought about knocking. Then I saw another car in the driveway, not her son's. Something older, unfamiliar. I froze. Later, I found out it was her ex-husband. Apparently, he'd come back into town for a few days. A friend mentioned it casually, unaware of the invisible bruise the words left behind. It explained the distance, the sudden quiet, the way she'd seemed caught between sentences last time we spoke. Still, knowing didn't help. It just made the air feel heavier. I stopped going by. I told myself it was for her sake, but it was really for mine. Every time I thought of her, of us, I felt caught in some kind of pause, like life had been holding its breath and forgot how to exhale. One night, my phone lit up with her name. I stared at the screen, the glow washing over the room. The message preview showed just one line. "Are you awake?" My pulse kicked. I typed back, "Yeah, I was just thinking about you." Then I stopped. Read it again. Deleted it. The 3 dots blinked, then vanished. No follow-up. No explanation. Just the dull hum of my ceiling fan and the sound of something quiet closing inside me. The next morning, I passed her house again. The curtains were open this time, sunlight spilling through. She was sitting by the window with a cup of tea, hair tied up loosely. She looked peaceful, or maybe just practiced. For a moment, I thought she saw me. Our eyes might have met, or maybe I imagined it. Hard to tell when the mind wants something that badly. I kept walking, didn't knock, didn't wave, didn't turn back. That night, I sat at my desk, phone face down, trying not to check it every few minutes. The silence between messages started to sound like punctuation, like a story that used to be written in long sentences, but now only came in pauses. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It was raining again, that slow, steady kind that didn't bother with thunder, just kept falling like it had all the time in the world. I hadn't planned to see her. My feet just led me there. She opened the door before I could even knock. Maybe she'd been standing close, listening. Or maybe she knew I'd come eventually. Her hair was a little damp, tied back loosely. She looked tired, softer somehow, like someone who had spent too many nights thinking instead of sleeping. "Hi," I said. The word felt too small. She didn't answer right away, just stepped aside, letting me in without ceremony. The familiar smell of tea and faint cinnamon filled the air. Everything looked the same, and completely different. We stood in the kitchen for a long moment. No words, just the sound of rain against the window. I caught the faint tremor in her hands as she set down her mug. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," she said finally, her voice quiet, but steady. "I wasn't sure either," I admitted. "Didn't know if it would make things worse." Her lips curved, but it wasn't quite a smile. "It might," she said, "but maybe worse is better than nothing." I breathed out, staring at the salt shaker still sitting on her counter. The same one from the first day. A tiny, ridiculous symbol of everything that started and never quite ended. "I thought maybe you didn't want to see me anymore," I said. She looked at me then, properly, directly, and I could feel the weight of it. "I didn't know what I wanted," she said. "Still don't, most days." The silence that followed wasn't cold this time, just full, like both of us had finally stopped pretending not to feel it. "I kept your message," she added quietly. I frowned. "What message?" "The one you didn't send." My heart stuttered. I almost laughed, because of course she'd guessed. She always did. I didn't know what to say, I murmured. "Neither did I," she said. Maybe that's why it mattered. For a moment, the distance between us felt unbearable. A single breath, a single decision away from something irreversible. I thought about the first time I saw her, the napkin, the way she folded silence like it was part of her. I thought about how much I'd wanted to reach across every pause since. "I don't know how to stop thinking about you," I said finally. It wasn't a confession, not exactly. More like an exhale that had been waiting for months. She didn't look surprised, just tired, soft, real. "Maybe you don't have to," she said. Then after a beat, "But we have to live with it." I nodded. The simplicity of it hurt more than any goodbye could. She reached out then, fingers brushing the back of my hand. Brief, steady, enough to anchor us both. "Okay," she whispered. I swallowed. "Okay." And somehow, that single word felt like the truest ending either of us could offer. Months passed, the kind that slip by unnoticed until something small reminds you they've been there all along. We found our way into something that didn't need defining. Not dramatic, not forbidden, just steady, quiet, and real. I still saw her most mornings, 8:47 a.m., like clockwork. She'd be by the window, hair damp from the shower, a cup of tea in hand. I'd wave from across the street, pretending it was casual, but it never really was. Sometimes I stopped by, sometimes I didn't. The rhythm of it became its own language. We never talked together. We just were. Her son had moved out by then, off to another city. The house felt larger, but lighter too. She'd started baking again. The cinnamon smell came back. I'd bring coffee, still too black for her taste, and she'd add sugar to both cups without asking. The way she stirred, slow and absent-minded, always made me smile. One evening, we walked to the park again. The same bench. The same stretch of quiet streetlights humming above. The world looked smaller now, but somehow safer. She sat down first, brushing a leaf off the seat. "You still come here," she said. "Habit," I replied. "Some things don't change." She tilted her head slightly, smiling. "Some do." We watched the clouds shift, the light soften. No grand declarations, no promises. Just the kind of peace that comes after surviving your own silence. "I used to think love was supposed to feel like a beginning," she said quietly. "Now it feels like staying." I nodded, the words sinking somewhere deep. "I think that's what I was looking for," I said. "Something that stays." Her hand found mine on the bench, naturally this time, without hesitation or guilt. The simplicity of it hit harder than anything that came before. We didn't need to talk about what it was. The air between us didn't ask for labels anymore. It just existed, calm, earned, full of tiny things that made the ordinary matter again. I thought about that first day, the door opening, her folding a napkin she never meant to fold perfectly, the moment that somehow stretched into all the others. Now, sitting beside her, rain began to whisper on the leaves again. I realized nothing had been accidental. Every pause, Every almost, every quiet, okay, it all led here. She looked at me then, eyes soft, the corners creased just slightly. Tea or coffee tomorrow? I smiled. Both, I said, just in case. She laughed, the same small, real laugh that started everything, and rested her head lightly against my shoulder. And in that small moment, the world felt finished, not because it ended, but